So now we are going to learn about interface. So we, in the previous topics, had learned about different kinds of inheritance scheme. We had seen about simple, hierarchical and multi-level. And over there we had mentioned about the multiple inheritance, and we had written a statement that in Java, multiple inheritance is not supported or promoted. So this multiple inheritances issue is primarily related to the fact or to the problem that we had already discussed in C++. If you remember, we had discussed about a topic called a diamond problem, and which basically involved with multiple inheritance. And suppose if you have a class B and C over here, and you have a class D which is inheriting from B and C, but B and C itself inherits from A. Now, if D wants to access a method in A, it will lead to a confusion whether it should go through B or it should go through C, which was the diamond problem that we had learned there. Now, as programming languages advanced, this was an issue that had to be solved, and in order to prevent design complexities and computational complexities. Now, Java supports this removal of ambiguity with the help of interfaces. This program basically highlights about the multiple inheritance problem. So basically, if you have a class called parent over here, parent1, and you have another class called parent2, both of these have two fun methods. And when we create a program like this where this new class test is inheriting from parent1 and parent2, and an object of test t is accessing this function fun, it obviously deals with the confusion of to inherit from which class, whether parent1 or parent2. Now we are talking about a situation where we are concerned about B, C, and D, and now I guess you can realize how the problem will be if there is another class A also involved. Now, this is the reason why multiple inheritance is being not promoted in higher level languages, and this is where we come up with a solution called interfaces. Now, an interface is a kind of class, and it is basically a technical term for representing an entity that is similar to a class, which means if you remember a class, it would contain methods as well as variables. Now, if you look at interface, an interface will contain methods as well as variables, but with a major difference. So we can say that an interface is a kind of class because it contains methods and variables, but it has a major difference. The methods are abstract, which means an interface will contain only the declaration of a method. It will not contain the definition of the method, but it will contain only the declaration of the method. The definition of the method will happen outside the interface, and the variables would be final and static in nature. So I hope this point is clear. Now, the syntax for an interface would be interface, the name, variable declaration and method declaration. So here example is given, an interface called area. You have a variable called pi, which is equal to 3.14, but it would be final, static, and it is a return data type float. You have a function or a method called compute, which is having two arguments x and y. Again, this has a return type float, but what happens in this compute is not defined in this interface. Similarly, you have a function called show. So that would be the point with it. If you look at this particular program, you can see that there is an interface titled mashup. It is having a method called print, which is declared and not defined. And now you have a class called cover, which is implementing this mashup and which is connecting to this interface. And then again, this cover has got a function called print, and it will be displaying this particular function called remix. So this print is same as this print. I hope you're getting the point. The function that is specified in the interface will be defined inside the class implementing the interface. So the basic task of this print is to print remix, as display a string called remix, and you have this main function. You have an object which is being created of this cover class, and you have the statement over here, and that obj is calling print, which will be displaying this particular string. So basically, if you look over here, a few things that we had to understand. So just like the keyword called extends, which was used for inheritance, when we use interfaces to relate it with a class, we use a keyword called implements. Now, this interface here contains only an abstract method which is defined in the other class. Now, what does this interface use for? One, we already spoke about its help in solving multiple inheritance, which we will see later. It also acts as a blueprint also. So if you have an enterprise software, an interface can define what are the mandatory variables and what are the mandatory methods required for the execution of the program. We'll look at it at a later example. Here a function print is declared in the interface, and hence it must be defined in the class implementing it. So if you look over here, we can see that this program has been created. We'll try running it. So we have brought this program into the compiler and we are going to execute it, and we can see that it has displayed the text called remix. So I hope you're getting the point of an interface. An interface, it will contain variables which are final and static, and it will contain methods which is only declared and not defined. Any class that is implementing this mashup, that is an interface, it will have to contain the declaration for the definition for that function which is defined in the declared in the interface. So that has to be taken care of. So we are taking a second example of an interface over here, the same program, but what I have done here is I've created this mashup interface. It has one function print, and I've created another function called show. So we'll see what will be the effect of having this code over there. I'm here to prove the point about what would happen if a function is declared inside this interface but it is not defined. You look over here, there are two functions here, print, and you have show over here, and you have the declaration only for the definition only for the print function. And when you try running this program, it basically deals with an error, and it says that cover is not abstract and does not override the method show in mashup, and you have an error that has come up over here. So it's primarily dealing with the function called show. Now if I actually create a new function definition over here, like I have a public int show, and I'm writing it as show remix, and since it has a return type int, I'm giving a return statement, return 0. I'm trying to run it. See, it has executed the program fine. So in the program, in the PPT, or this function show was only declared and not defined, and it led to an error. Now if I define the function inside this class, it is solved. The PPT involves some other programs also, which you can use it for your learning purpose. Now this is an interface program where you have an interface which contains a variable called float or rate of interest. Now you have a class called SBI which implements from this bank, and it's having a function called float rate of interest, which is supposed to return 9.15, and class PNB which implements bank, and again its rate of interest is 9.7, and you have the objects being created over here and calling the function rate of interest. So you can see what happens when you actually use an interface. I would request you to combine this program and study and try replacing the constructor SBI with PNB and try to look into what would be the difference in this particular case. This diagram is self-explanatory. Now when we talk about multiple inheritance in Java, it can be done with interface. Now we have learned about how interface helps. Now if multiple inheritance is to be dealt with, if it is between two interfaces and a class, we are going to use a keyword called implements. If it is between two interfaces which is inherited to another interface, then we use the keyword extends. Now please understand this when you apply your concept. We are going to look into this program. So basically you can see that there is an interface over here, int print, which has got a function, declaration print, and this has the next interface which is called int show. Now it has got a function called show. Now I have a class dinero which implements these two interfaces. So this statement is an example of multiple inheritance, only that it is inheriting from this entity called interfaces. I hope that point is clear. Now this class should contain the definition for the function, hence print would be displaying hello and the show would be displaying welcome. Now you have the main function, you have the object being created, and this object will be calling print and show. Now how does this solve this ambiguity problem? Basically if you look over here, you had the issue over here when you had a class parent1 and parent2 which had function definitions over here. Now this one was supposed to display parent1, this function was supposed to display parent2. This created the ambiguity. Now there is only the function definition is present over here which created the ambiguity. Now when you come back to the interface situation, you can see that the function is already there. Only the function is there, and what can be done over here is this particular function can be called without any difficulty over here, because there is only a declaration over here in either of the cases, and the definition happens in the single class. Hence you are getting rid of this problem of ambiguity. So we are actually running this program, and you can see that this interface print is there and this interface show is there, and this statement basically is resembling the multiple inheritance. It is inheriting from print and it is inheriting from show. So basically we are getting rid of this particular scheme or the difficulties of the ambiguity that is present in the diamond problem that we had discussed earlier. And this definition is not provided here, hence there won't be any confusion, and the definition would be existing here inside this class. So when we run this program, we can see that it creates the output as desired when it's calling this function print, and when it creates a function show, it displays hello and welcome respectively. Now one of the point that might be under concern here is you have this function called print. So I'm creating this function also as print, and definitely this, if you have this concept like we can add a print over here. Now this print belongs to show and this print belongs to print. It is not going to happen because a class can have only one method with this name print or with this signature print, no arguments. Now if you look over here, this is also another function with the no argument, so this will lead to error. It will show out the indication that the method print is already defined in the class dinero. So definitely the functions must be different. It is not an exact way by which we are reducing the ambiguity and solving this issue, but then for implementing and multiple inheritance, this would be the scheme that would be used in Java. So I hope the concept is clear. Please remember to add the keyword public in case if the program is not running. Please make sure the keyword public is added because I added to this particular